In the Central Pacific during November 1943, the atoll of Tarawa consists of a ring of coral enclosing a shallow lagoon, with Betio Island forming the southwestern tip. Betio measures approximately 2 miles in length and less than half a mile in width. The island's surface is low and flat, rising only a few feet above sea level. Coconut palms, scrub vegetation, and man-made fortifications occupy most of the ground. The surrounding reef extends several hundred yards from the shoreline, with water depth varying according to tide. The lagoon side offers calmer water, while the ocean side is exposed to heavier surf. At this time the atoll is held by Japanese naval forces assigned to the defense of the Gilbert Islands. Japanese preparations on Betio include a system of concrete pillboxes, log and sand emplacements, trench networks, and underground shelters. These positions are oriented primarily toward the lagoon beaches, which are assessed by the defenders as the most likely landing areas. Artillery pieces, including coastal defense guns and dual-purpose weapons, are emplaced to cover approaches across the reef and lagoon. Machine guns are sited to produce interlocking fields of fire along the beaches and inland approaches. Obstacles consisting of logs, steel rails, and mines are placed in shallow water near the shore. Communications lines connect defensive positions, and command posts are established below ground level. Supplies of ammunition, food, and water are stockpiled within the island perimeter. The Japanese garrison on Betio includes elements of the Special Naval Landing Forces, construction units, and support personnel. Command responsibility rests with a rear admiral assigned to the area. Training emphasizes static defense and resistance from prepared positions. Orders direct that the island is to be held against attack, with no provision for withdrawal. Personnel are distributed among defensive sectors with assigned fields of fire and fallback positions. Daily routines include maintenance of weapons, reinforcement of fortifications, and observation of surrounding waters. United States naval and amphibious forces assemble east of the Gilbert Islands during mid-November. The operation plan calls for the seizure of Tarawa Atoll, with Betio designated as the primary objective. Naval task groups include battleships, cruisers, destroyers, escort carriers, transports, and specialized landing craft. Amphibious troops are drawn primarily from a Marine division trained for assault landings. Units conduct final rehearsals at sea, review maps and aerial photographs, and receive briefings on terrain, defenses, and objectives. Equipment inspections are conducted, and ammunition and rations are issued for initial phases of the operation. Reconnaissance flights over Betio provide photographic coverage of the island. Analysts identify gun emplacements, airfield facilities, and trench systems. Tidal data are collected and distributed to planners. The reef surrounding the island is noted as a potential obstacle, with assessments varying regarding the depth of water at predicted tide levels. Specialized tracked landing vehicles are allocated for the first assault waves, intended to cross the reef and reach the beach under their own power. Conventional landing craft are assigned to follow on waves, with the expectation that sufficient water depth will allow them to approach closer to shore. Naval bombardment is scheduled to precede the landings. Fire plans allocate targets to individual ships, with emphasis on coastal defenses, identified gun positions, and suspected command centers. Carrier aircraft are tasked with strikes against defensive installations and airfield areas. Communications procedures are established for coordination between naval gunfire, air support, and landing forces. Signal plans and frequencies are distributed, and liaison officers are assigned. On November 20, 1943, prior to dawn, United States naval forces take station around Tarawa Atoll. Weather conditions include scattered clouds and moderate seas. At first light, carrier aircraft commence strikes against Betio. Bombs and rockets are delivered against visible fortifications, aircraft revetments, and supply areas. Smoke and dust rise from impact points across the island. Anti-aircraft fire is observed from several positions, with tracers visible against the sky. Aircraft make repeated passes until fuel and ordnance limits require withdrawal. Following air strikes, naval gunfire begins. Battleships open fire with main batteries, targeting shoreline defenses and inland positions. Cruisers and destroyers engage secondary targets and suspected strongpoints. Fire is adjusted based on spotter reports and observed impacts. The bombardment continues for several hours, with intervals of concentrated fire followed by shifts in target areas. Debris and smoke obscure portions of the island. Some defensive positions remain intact, while others show visible damage. Japanese return fire is intermittent, with several guns engaging the bombardment force until silenced or masked by smoke. As bombardment continues, assault transports lower landing craft into the water. Troops embark in full combat equipment, including weapons, ammunition, and supplies. Assault waves are organized according to landing schedules, with units assigned specific beach sectors designated by color codes. Tracked amphibious vehicles move toward assembly areas near the line of departure. Crews conduct final checks of engines and weapons. Naval control vessels coordinate the movement of craft into formation. At the scheduled time, the first assault waves move toward Betio from the lagoon side. Tracked vehicles lead, followed by waves of landing craft carrying infantry. The distance from the line of departure to the reef edge is covered under naval gunfire support. As the vehicles approach the reef, water depth decreases. Some tracked vehicles maintain forward movement, climbing onto the reef surface and continuing toward the beach. Landing craft encounter shallower water sooner than anticipated, with keels contacting coral heads at varying distances from shore. Japanese defensive fire increases as the assault waves close the island. Machine guns and artillery engage the approaching vehicles and craft. Tracers strike water and hulls. Some tracked vehicles are hit and disabled before reaching the beach. Others continue forward despite damage. Landing craft that ground on the reef halt abruptly, forcing troops to disembark into water ranging from waist to chest depth. Marines wade forward under fire, carrying weapons and equipment above the surface where possible. Casualties occur during the crossing of the reef. Some personnel are struck while in the water. Others lose footing on uneven coral surfaces. Equipment is dropped or submerged. The distance from grounded craft to the shoreline varies, in some cases exceeding several hundred yards. Movement across the reef proceeds slowly due to water depth, obstacles, and fire. Tracked vehicles that reach the beach attempt to cross the narrow strip of sand and move inland, engaging visible targets with onboard weapons. Upon reaching the shoreline, assault troops encounter a low seawall constructed of logs and coral fill. Behind the seawall, Japanese positions deliver fire through embrasures and over the top. Marines take cover against the seawall where possible. Efforts are made to breach or bypass obstacles using explosives and tools carried by assault engineers. Smoke grenades are employed to obscure movement along the beach. Communications between units are disrupted by casualties and equipment damage. Naval gunfire shifts to inland targets as the assault proceeds, with some fire directed closer to the beach in response to requests. Air support sorties resume, delivering ordnance against identified strongpoints. Coordination challenges arise due to proximity of friendly forces and limited visibility. Forward observers attempt to relay target information via radio, though some sets are damaged or submerged during landing. Runners are used where radios fail. On the beach, small groups of Marines organize under available leaders. Weapons are brought into action against nearby pillboxes and trench lines. Automatic rifles and machine guns are positioned to provide covering fire. Demolition charges are placed against embrasures and bunker entrances. Flamethrowers are brought forward where available, though some are rendered inoperable by water exposure. Progress inland is measured in yards, with movement constrained by fire from multiple directions. Japanese defenders maintain fire from prepared positions. Some positions remain intact after the bombardment, with fields of fire covering beach approaches. Others are partially damaged but still occupied. Defenders utilize grenades, small arms, and automatic weapons. Fire is directed at concentrations of troops and vehicles on the beach. Counterfire from assault troops focuses on suppressing visible firing points. As additional waves attempt to land, similar difficulties occur at the reef. Many landing craft are unable to clear the coral and ground at distances from shore. Personnel disembark and move forward on foot. Casualties accumulate among later waves as fire continues. Some units experience delays reaching the beach, causing congestion on the reef and in shallow water. Medical personnel establish aid stations where possible, often under fire, using limited supplies. Command elements attempt to establish control over the beachhead. Unit boundaries are adjusted based on actual landing locations and surviving leadership. Objectives assigned for initial phases are modified to reflect conditions on the ground. Communications with higher headquarters remain intermittent. Naval control vessels continue to manage the flow of landing craft, though losses among craft and crews reduce capacity. By midday, portions of the beach remain under heavy fire, while other sections see limited penetration inland. Tracked vehicles that survive provide direct fire support against bunkers and trench systems. Some vehicles are immobilized by damage or obstacles and continue firing from fixed positions. Ammunition resupply is conducted by hand from landing craft and supply dumps established near the shoreline. Water shortages begin to appear as canteens are depleted. Japanese artillery fires sporadically from concealed positions, targeting the beach and lagoon approaches. Some guns are engaged and silenced by naval gunfire or direct fire from vehicles. Others continue to fire until ammunition is exhausted or crews are neutralized. Smoke and dust persist over much of the island, reducing visibility and complicating movement. Throughout the day, efforts continue to expand the foothold on Betio. Assault units push forward where possible, clearing trenches and bunkers methodically. Progress varies by sector, with some areas seeing limited advance and others remaining pinned near the seawall. Casualty evacuation is conducted by stretcher bearers to the reef edge, where wounded are transferred to landing craft when available. Many wounded remain on the beach for extended periods due to fire and limited transport. Naval gunfire support remains active, with destroyers moving closer to shore to engage targets directly. Fire missions are adjusted based on reports from forward observers and visual identification. Some ships sustain minor damage from return fire. Air support continues intermittently, subject to fuel and ordnance availability. Aircraft deliver close support strikes where clearance permits. As daylight progresses, the tide remains lower than expected, continuing to affect landing operations. Follow-on units experience similar challenges crossing the reef. Heavy weapons, including mortars and artillery, are delayed in reaching the beach due to difficulties moving equipment across shallow water and coral. Improvised methods are used to move supplies forward, including hand carry and use of damaged vehicles as platforms. Japanese defenders maintain resistance from remaining positions. Some attempt limited movement between positions using trench systems. Others remain in isolated bunkers, continuing to fire until neutralized. Assault troops employ repeated attacks against individual strongpoints, using combined arms where available. Each position requires dedicated effort to suppress and clear. By late afternoon, portions of the beachhead are consolidated to a limited depth inland. Command posts are established in captured or damaged structures where available. Defensive measures are taken in anticipation of night activity, including reorganization of units and redistribution of ammunition. Communications with naval forces are improved as additional equipment is brought ashore. As darkness approaches, firing continues across the island. The beach area remains active with movement of wounded, supplies, and personnel. Naval vessels maintain stations offshore, providing illumination and fire support as required. The situation on Betio remains fluid, with control contested across much of the island. The operation continues into the night with ongoing engagement between assault forces and defenders. During the night of 20 to 21 November 1943, activity on Betio continues without interruption. Darkness reduces visibility across the island and lagoon, but illumination is provided intermittently by naval star shells and fires burning among damaged structures. Assault units maintain positions gained during daylight, with personnel occupying shell holes, trench segments, and the lee side of the seawall where forward movement has not yet occurred. Weapons are kept ready, and sentries are posted with overlapping fields of observation. Communications remain limited, relying on runners and short-range radio traffic where equipment is operational. Japanese defensive activity continues after nightfall. Small arms fire, grenades, and occasional automatic weapon bursts originate from remaining fortified positions and trench systems. Some defenders move between positions using covered routes. Others remain in isolated bunkers, continuing to fire toward the beach and inland approaches. No coordinated counterattack is observed, though localized engagements occur where opposing forces are in close proximity. Assault troops respond with rifle and automatic fire directed at muzzle flashes and suspected movement. Medical evacuation during the night proceeds under constrained conditions. Wounded personnel are gathered at improvised aid points near the shoreline and behind limited cover inland. Corpsmen operate with reduced lighting and depleted supplies. Evacuation to offshore vessels is intermittent, dependent on availability of landing craft and relative reduction in fire along the beach. Some wounded remain in place until daylight due to the inability to move them safely. Naval vessels maintain readiness offshore. Destroyers operate closer to the reef, adjusting positions to provide fire support if requested. Larger ships remain at assigned stations, maintaining communications with control vessels. Carrier aircraft are not employed during the hours of darkness. Naval gunfire is used selectively, with illumination rounds fired to assist observation of potential movement on the island. By early morning on November 21, first light reveals the disposition of forces along the beach and immediate inland areas. Assault units have established several discontinuous footholds beyond the seawall, extending into the interior by limited distances. Other sections remain confined to the shoreline. Equipment losses from the previous day are evident, with disabled tracked vehicles, damaged landing craft, and scattered supplies visible along the reef and beach. Preparations begin for renewed offensive action at daylight. Unit leaders reorganize available personnel, consolidating understrength squads and platoons. Ammunition is redistributed, and weapons are inspected for damage caused by saltwater exposure. Heavy weapons delayed during the initial landings are brought forward as conditions permit. Mortars are assembled and emplaced where cover allows, with firing data prepared for known enemy positions. Naval gunfire resumes at first light, targeting identified strongpoints that remained active overnight. Destroyers deliver direct fire against pillboxes and bunker apertures near the shoreline. Spotters observe impacts and relay corrections. Dust, smoke, and debris again obscure parts of the island. Carrier aircraft commence strikes shortly thereafter, attacking remaining fortifications, trench networks, and suspected command areas. Following preparatory fires, assault units advance from their positions. Movement proceeds in short bounds, using available cover. Engineers and demolition teams accompany infantry elements to address obstacles and fortified positions. Charges are placed against bunker entrances and seawall sections. Flamethrowers are employed where operational, directing bursts into firing slits and ventilation openings. Each advance is conducted against resistance varying by sector. Japanese defenders continue to engage from remaining positions. Fire originates from concrete emplacements, log-reinforced bunkers, and trench intersections. Some positions are engaged repeatedly until fire ceases. Others remain active despite nearby detonations. Assault troops employ combined fire from rifles, automatic weapons, mortars, and vehicle-mounted guns to suppress and reduce resistance. Progress inland continues incrementally. On the lagoon side, efforts are made to improve the flow of supplies and reinforcements. Landing craft continue to ground on the reef due to tide conditions, requiring personnel to wade forward. Engineers attempt to mark channels across the reef to facilitate movement. Tracked vehicles that remain operational shuttle ammunition and personnel from the reef edge to forward positions. Casualties among vehicle crews continue as vehicles are engaged by remaining anti-tank weapons and artillery. By mid-morning, some units reach the vicinity of the airstrip running east-west across Betio. The strip consists of compacted coral and soil, bordered by revetments and scattered structures. Japanese positions are located along the edges and at intervals within this area. Assault troops take cover along embankments and depressions, engaging defenders across open ground. Mortar fire is used to suppress positions beyond direct line of sight. Resistance varies across the airstrip area. In some sectors, defenders withdraw to secondary positions or are neutralized by concentrated fire. In others, fire continues from concealed positions, halting movement until additional support is brought forward. Assault units coordinate with naval gunfire and air support to address these positions where communications permit. Close coordination is limited by proximity of friendly forces and the risk of misdirected fire. Medical and logistical activity continues throughout the morning. Aid stations are relocated forward as areas are secured. Water and rations are distributed where possible. Ammunition expenditure remains high, particularly for automatic weapons and demolitions. Resupply from offshore vessels continues under fire, with landing craft crews exposed during unloading operations. Japanese artillery activity diminishes as individual guns are engaged and destroyed or rendered inoperative. Some weapons fire sporadically until silenced. Machine gun fire remains prevalent from isolated positions. Sniper activity is observed from palm trees and concealed locations, prompting countermeasures by assault troops. By early afternoon, assault units advance beyond the airstrip in several sectors, moving toward the eastern end of the island. Progress remains uneven, with some units advancing several hundred yards while others remain engaged near earlier objectives. Command and control continue to rely on fragmentary communications. Liaison officers move between units to coordinate actions and relay information. Naval gunfire shifts targets further inland as friendly forces advance. Destroyers reposition as required to maintain effective angles of fire. Carrier aircraft conduct additional sorties, delivering bombs and strafing runs against remaining resistance. Smoke continues to rise from multiple points across the island, reducing visibility at times. As the day progresses, Japanese resistance becomes increasingly localized. Isolated groups continue to fight from bunkers and trench segments. Assault troops address each position individually, often requiring multiple attempts to neutralize. Engineers play a central role in clearing these positions using explosives and specialized equipment. By late afternoon on November 21, the area under assault force control extends across much of Betio's width in several sectors. Remaining resistance is concentrated in pockets toward the eastern end and in isolated fortified positions elsewhere. Units prepare to continue operations into the evening, consolidating gains where possible and maintaining pressure on remaining defenders. Night approaches with continued exchanges of fire. Assault troops establish defensive perimeters around forward positions. Naval illumination is again employed to monitor movement. Medical evacuation and resupply continue as conditions permit. The operation proceeds into a second night with ongoing engagement across the island. During the night of 21 to 22 November 1943, activity on Betio remains continuous. Assault units hold positions gained during daylight, occupying captured trenches, shell craters, and damaged structures. Defensive arrangements are improvised based on terrain and available manpower. Automatic weapons are positioned to cover likely approaches, and listening posts are established where feasible. Illumination from naval star shells intermittently reveals portions of the island, lagoon, and reef. Japanese defensive fire continues from remaining positions. Small arms fire, grenades, and occasional bursts from automatic weapons are directed toward forward marine positions. Movement is observed within trench systems and among debris-covered areas. Engagements occur at close range in several sectors, particularly where opposing positions remain within short distance of each other. Assault units respond with controlled fire to conserve ammunition while maintaining pressure on suspected positions. Medical operations during the night remain constrained. Corpsmen continue to treat wounded under limited light, often in exposed positions. Evacuation to the beach and reef edge proceeds when conditions allow, but many wounded remain in forward areas until daylight. Supplies of medical materials are low, and improvised measures are employed where standard equipment is unavailable. Naval forces maintain readiness offshore. Destroyers continue to provide illumination and stand by for fire missions. Larger vessels remain on station, monitoring communications and coordinating with control craft. Landing craft movement is limited during darkness, though some resupply operations continue under reduced visibility. At first light on November 22, visibility improves across Betio. Smoke from fires and previous bombardment lingers over portions of the island. Assault units assess positions and prepare to resume offensive action. Remaining Japanese positions are identified through observation of firing points, movement, and intelligence gathered during the night. Unit leaders reorganize personnel, integrating replacements and redistributing ammunition. Naval gunfire resumes shortly after dawn. Destroyers engage targets near the eastern end of the island, where resistance remains concentrated. Fire is adjusted based on spotter reports and visual observation. Carrier aircraft conduct additional strikes against identified bunkers, trench lines, and suspected command locations. Bombs and rockets impact across the eastern sectors, producing further damage and debris. Following preparatory fires, assault units advance eastward. Movement proceeds cautiously, with infantry supported by engineers and remaining armored vehicles. Progress is measured and deliberate, with emphasis on clearing each position encountered. Bunkers are engaged using demolitions, flamethrowers, and direct fire. Trench systems are cleared section by section, with grenades and small arms employed at close range. Japanese resistance in the eastern sector is fragmented but persistent. Individual bunkers and trench nodes continue to fire until neutralized. Some defenders remain concealed until assault troops approach closely, then engage at short range. Assault units respond with coordinated fire and demolition. Casualties occur during these engagements, particularly among personnel tasked with clearing fortified positions. By mid-morning, assault units reach the eastern end of the airstrip and adjacent areas. The terrain consists of open coral surfaces interspersed with damaged structures, revetments, and debris. Remaining Japanese positions are located among these features and along the shoreline. Naval gunfire is directed against coastal positions on the ocean side, while infantry advances continue inland. Logistical operations continue throughout the morning. Ammunition resupply is conducted from beach dumps forward to assault elements. Water distribution remains a concern, with limited supplies reaching some units. Engineers work to improve movement routes across the island, clearing debris and marking safe paths where possible. Disabled vehicles are used as cover or firing positions. Medical evacuation improves slightly as areas are secured. Landing craft are able to approach closer to shore in some sectors, facilitating transfer of wounded to offshore vessels. Corpsmen continue to operate under fire in forward areas, stabilizing casualties for evacuation. Aid stations are relocated forward as the line advances. By early afternoon, remaining Japanese resistance is confined to isolated pockets near the eastern tip of Betio and scattered fortified positions elsewhere. Assault units coordinate to reduce these pockets systematically. Naval gunfire and air support are employed selectively to avoid friendly casualties. Each engagement involves identification, suppression, and clearance of individual positions. In several instances, defenders continue to fire from bunkers after surrounding positions have been cleared. Assault troops employ repeated demolition attempts to neutralize these positions. Flamethrowers are used where structural integrity permits. In some cases, bunkers collapse under repeated explosive charges. In others, fire ceases following direct engagement. As the afternoon progresses, organized resistance diminishes further. Assault units maintain vigilance for concealed positions and potential movement. Sniper fire continues sporadically, prompting immediate countermeasures. Units advance to the eastern shoreline, securing positions along the beach and adjacent areas. Naval forces adjust positions as required to support final clearing operations. Destroyers engage remaining coastal targets. Carrier aircraft reduce sortie frequency as targets become fewer and closer to friendly positions. Smoke and dust continue to rise intermittently from demolition and fires. By late afternoon on November 22, most of Betio is under assault force control. Remaining Japanese defenders are isolated in small groups or individual positions. Assault units establish temporary defensive perimeters while continuing clearance operations. Communications between units improve as additional equipment is brought forward and command posts are established in secured areas. As evening approaches, assault units prepare for night operations. Defensive positions are organized around cleared areas, with overlapping fields of fire and observation. Ammunition is redistributed, and weapons are serviced. Medical evacuation continues where possible, and remaining wounded are moved toward the beach. During the night of 22 to 23 November, limited engagements occur as remaining defenders attempt movement or continue resistance from isolated positions. Assault troops respond with localized fire and patrols. Naval illumination is used to monitor activity near the shoreline and interior areas. At first light on November 23, clearing operations resume. Assault units conduct systematic sweeps of remaining areas, focusing on known or suspected positions. Engineers accompany infantry to address remaining bunkers and shelters. Each position is engaged until resistance ceases. Throughout the morning, isolated engagements continue. Some defenders emerge from concealed positions and are engaged immediately. Others remain in place until discovered during sweeps. Assault units maintain coordination to avoid gaps and ensure thorough clearance of the island. By midday, organized resistance has ceased across Betio. Assault units continue to secure the area, inspecting fortifications, shelters, and debris fields. Naval forces maintain station offshore, prepared to support if required. Medical and logistical operations continue as attention shifts to consolidation and stabilization of the position. Operations on Betio proceed with continued clearance, casualty evacuation, and establishment of control across the island. The engagement concludes with assault forces in possession of the atoll's primary objective, while naval units remain on station to support subsequent operations. Following the cessation of organized resistance on Betio during November 23, 1943, operations continue without interruption. Assault units remain deployed across the island, maintaining security while clearance and stabilization activities proceed. Patrols move through previously contested areas, inspecting trench systems, bunkers, underground shelters, and damaged structures. Each position is approached cautiously, with weapons ready, and cleared according to established procedures. Engineers accompany infantry elements to address unexploded ordnance, booby traps, and structurally unstable fortifications. Japanese personnel remaining on the island are encountered sporadically. Some are found wounded within shelters or collapsed positions. Others are discovered concealed in debris or vegetation. Engagements occur when resistance is offered. Medical personnel provide treatment to wounded where feasible, under guard. Prisoners are secured and moved to designated holding areas near the shoreline. Documentation of captured materials, weapons, and equipment begins as areas are secured. Naval forces continue to maintain station around Tarawa Atoll. Minesweepers operate in the lagoon and approaches, clearing suspected minefields and marking safe channels. Landing craft continue to move personnel and supplies between offshore vessels and the island. Salvage operations begin for damaged or stranded craft along the reef and beach. Crews assess vehicles and equipment left in shallow water during earlier phases, recovering usable items where possible. On Betio, command elements establish more permanent command posts using intact or reinforced structures. Communications networks are repaired and expanded. Wire lines are laid between command posts, aid stations, and logistical points. Radio equipment is serviced and repositioned to improve coverage across the island and lagoon. Reports are compiled regarding unit strength, casualties, equipment losses, and ammunition expenditure. Medical operations expand as conditions stabilize. Aid stations are reorganized into more structured facilities. Casualties remaining on the island are prepared for evacuation to hospital ships and shore-based medical facilities as transport becomes available. Corpsmen and medical officers continue treatment of wounded personnel, addressing infections, dehydration, and exposure resulting from prolonged combat and environmental conditions. Sanitation measures are implemented to reduce the risk of disease. Logistical activities increase in scope. Supply dumps are established in cleared areas, organized by type of material. Ammunition, rations, water, medical supplies, and engineering equipment are distributed according to unit requirements. Engineers continue to improve movement routes across the island, filling shell holes, clearing debris, and marking safe paths. The airstrip area is inspected, with assessments made regarding damage and repair requirements. Throughout November 23, naval and shore-based personnel conduct inspections of Japanese fortifications. Concrete pillboxes, log-reinforced bunkers, trench systems, and underground shelters are examined. Weapons recovered include machine guns, rifles, mortars, artillery pieces, and associated ammunition. Documentation teams record locations and characteristics of defensive works. Maps are updated to reflect cleared areas and remaining hazards. Environmental conditions continue to affect operations. Heat and humidity place strain on personnel engaged in extended activity. Water distribution remains a priority, with resupply efforts ongoing from offshore vessels. Shade is limited, and personnel rotate duties where possible to manage fatigue. Equipment exposed to saltwater is cleaned and serviced to restore functionality. During the night of 23 to 24 November, security measures remain in effect. Sentries are posted across the island, and patrols continue to check cleared areas. Occasional sounds or movement prompt localized responses, though no coordinated resistance is observed. Naval illumination is used intermittently to observe the shoreline and lagoon approaches. Landing craft continue limited movement under controlled conditions. At first light on November 24, further consolidation activities commence. Units conduct detailed searches of remaining structures and terrain features. Engineers address remaining explosive hazards. Documentation of captured material continues, with items collected for intelligence analysis or disposal. Demolition teams destroy unusable fortifications and equipment to prevent hazards to personnel. Naval operations shift toward support of consolidation and preparation for subsequent activities within the atoll. Some vessels reposition or depart according to orders, while others remain on station to provide logistical and medical support. Aircraft conduct limited reconnaissance flights over the atoll and surrounding waters. Airfield inspection teams assess the runway surface and adjacent facilities, noting areas requiring repair. Personnel not engaged in security or clearance duties begin limited rest cycles. Equipment maintenance is conducted at unit level. Weapons are cleaned and inspected. Vehicles are repaired or cannibalized for parts where damage is extensive. Engineers continue to work on infrastructure tasks, including drainage, shelter construction, and improvement of defensive positions against potential future threats. Japanese documents and equipment recovered during clearance operations are collected and catalogued. Intelligence personnel review materials for information on unit composition, defensive plans, and supply status. Maps, orders, and personal effects are examined. Language specialists assist in translation and interpretation. Findings are forwarded through appropriate channels. Medical evacuation continues as transport becomes available. Hospital ships receive wounded personnel from landing craft. Records are updated to reflect status and disposition of casualties. Burial details handle remains of those killed during the engagement, conducting identification and interment according to established procedures. Graves are marked, and records are maintained. By late November 24, Betio is largely stabilized. Defensive arrangements are formalized, with sectors assigned and positions improved. Observation posts are established along the shoreline and key terrain features. Communications with higher headquarters are reliable. Logistical flow stabilizes, allowing sustained support of forces on the island. Operations extend to other parts of Tarawa Atoll as required. Patrols and reconnaissance elements move to adjacent islets to ensure security and identify any remaining threats. Naval and amphibious units coordinate these activities. Minesweeping continues to clear approaches for safe navigation. Throughout this period, documentation of the operation is ongoing. Unit journals, action reports, and logs are compiled. Personnel provide statements regarding equipment performance, landing procedures, and logistical challenges encountered. These records are forwarded through command channels for review and filing. As days progress, focus remains on maintaining security, supporting personnel, and preparing the position for continued use. Engineering work proceeds on the airstrip and support facilities. Supplies are stockpiled. Training and drills resume on a limited basis as conditions permit. The situation on Betio remains under control, with no organized enemy activity observed. Naval forces continue to operate in the vicinity, providing support and maintaining readiness. The atoll functions as a secured area, with ongoing activity centered on consolidation, support, and preparation for subsequent operations within the theater. In the days following November 24, 1943, operations on Betio and within Tarawa Atoll continue under established security conditions. Assault units transition fully from combat operations to occupation, stabilization, and preparation tasks. Unit boundaries are formalized, and responsibility for specific sectors is assigned. Routine patrols are conducted along the shoreline, lagoon perimeter, and interior areas to maintain situational awareness and detect any remaining hazards. Engineering activities expand across the island. Work details focus on clearing rubble from primary movement routes, reinforcing seawalls and revetments, and improving drainage in low-lying areas. Shell craters and damaged sections of the airstrip are filled and leveled using available equipment and manual labor. Engineers assess structural integrity of surviving buildings and shelters, reinforcing those designated for continued use and demolishing others deemed unsafe. Temporary shelters are constructed using salvaged materials to provide protection from weather and sun. The airstrip receives sustained attention. Survey teams measure surface condition, identify areas requiring resurfacing, and mark sections suitable for immediate limited use. Coral fill and compacted soil are redistributed to repair damaged segments. Equipment is brought ashore to support grading and compaction. Adjacent facilities, including revetments and service areas, are cleared and organized for potential aircraft operations. Communications links are established between the airstrip area and command elements. Logistical flow stabilizes as shipping schedules are adjusted to support ongoing requirements. Cargo is unloaded systematically, with priority given to construction materials, fuel, water, medical supplies, and communications equipment. Supply dumps are reorganized to improve accessibility and security. Inventory records are updated regularly, and redistribution is conducted based on unit consumption rates. Medical operations transition toward longer-term care and recovery. Remaining wounded are evacuated as transport becomes available. Medical personnel monitor health conditions among occupying forces, addressing issues related to heat exposure, dehydration, and sanitation. Preventive measures are implemented, including water purification, waste disposal, and vector control. Medical facilities are expanded with additional tents and equipment as conditions allow. Intelligence activities continue through analysis of captured documents, equipment, and fortifications. Reports are compiled detailing the layout of defenses, types of weapons employed, and logistical arrangements observed on the island. Technical personnel examine artillery pieces, machine guns, and other material to determine characteristics and condition. Findings are transmitted through intelligence channels for distribution within the theater. Naval operations adjust as the situation stabilizes. Some combatant vessels depart the area to rejoin assigned task groups, while support ships remain to provide logistical and medical assistance. Minesweeping operations continue in designated zones until approaches are certified as safe for routine navigation. Harbor control procedures are established within the lagoon, regulating movement of vessels and landing craft. Training and reorganization occur at unit level. Personnel conduct equipment maintenance, weapons qualification, and limited tactical exercises adapted to available space and conditions. Replacement personnel are integrated into units, and leadership assignments are adjusted to reflect casualties and rotations. Administrative functions resume, including pay records, personnel accounting, and correspondence processing. Burial and memorial activities proceed according to established protocols. Graves registration units continue identification and interment operations. Records are completed and forwarded to appropriate authorities. Personal effects are collected, catalogued, and prepared for disposition. Areas designated for burial are marked and maintained. Environmental conditions continue to influence daily operations. Heat and humidity affect work schedules, with tasks adjusted to reduce exposure during peak conditions. Freshwater remains a critical resource, requiring continued resupply and careful management. Food preparation and distribution are organized to support sustained activity. Coordination with higher headquarters increases as communications stabilize. Situation reports are transmitted regularly, detailing personnel strength, material status, and operational readiness. Planning activities begin for potential future tasks within the region, with reconnaissance and engineering assessments informing requirements. Operations extend periodically beyond Betio to other islets within Tarawa Atoll. Reconnaissance patrols and survey teams verify security and assess terrain and facilities. Naval units support these movements, providing transport and security. Findings are incorporated into overall atoll management plans. Documentation of the operation continues throughout this period. Unit after-action reports are finalized. Logs from naval vessels, air units, and ground forces are compiled and submitted. Photographic and mapping materials are organized and archived. Technical evaluations of equipment performance and logistical processes are recorded. By the end of this phase, Betio functions as an organized occupied position. Defensive arrangements are established, infrastructure repair is ongoing, and logistical systems operate on a routine basis. Naval and ground forces maintain readiness while supporting continued activity across Tarawa Atoll. The sequence of actions transitions fully from combat engagement to sustained operational presence, with ongoing focus on security, support, and preparation for subsequent assigned tasks within the theater.